Hey everyone, this is Jungkook. Before we start, I want to know where you're listening from. Drop your country in the comments below, because what I'm about to say is not something I've ever said publicly before. Not in interviews, not in lives, not even in the quiet moments when cameras stop rolling. It's something that's been growing in me for years. Something that started as a whisper, then a doubt, then a realization so heavy it kept me awake for night. People think they know everything about me, about us, about BTS, about what our lives look like from the outside. They see the music, the laughter, the perfect photos, the headlines that say things like Jungkook postpones his wedding or Jungkook cancels his wedding plans. But what they don't see is the truth behind those headlines, the truth I've been afraid to say out loud until now. My wedding isn't canceled. It's becoming something bigger. And by bigger, I don't mean more luxurious or more public or more spectacular. I mean something more real. Something that's making me rethink everything I thought I knew about love, fame, and what it means to belong. For years, I thought love was something that could fit between schedules, rehearsals, and flights. I thought I could control it the same way I control my voice on stage. But love doesn't listen to your manager. It doesn't care about your image. It doesn't wait for a perfect moment when everyone approves. It arrives like a storm, messy, inconvenient, unpredictable, and it forces you to look at yourself without the filters. And that's what's happening to me now. My wedding plans haven't been canceled. They've evolved into a reflection of everything I've learned from the people who shaped me most. Namjoon, who taught me about leadership and calm. Jin, who taught me humor even in chaos. Yoongi, who taught me silence can be more powerful than words. Hoseok, who taught me energy is a form of love. Jimin, who taught me gentleness isn't weakness. Taehyung, who taught me mystery can coexist with sincerity. Every one of them built a part of me. And if I'm honest, my idea of marriage, what it means, what it should feel like, comes from watching how we held each other up through storms. There was a night not long ago when I sat alone in my apartment in Seoul, lights off, scrolling through my phone. News alerts, comments, opinions, theories. Everyone seemed to have an idea about my life. He's too young. He's not ready. He's hiding something. That's when it hit me. I was becoming what they wanted me to be, an image, not a person. And that image was so perfect, so polished, that it started replacing my real self. I remember putting the phone down and realizing my hands were shaking. It wasn't because of what people said. It was because I finally saw the danger of letting noise decide my future. That night, I decided something. I won't let my wedding, my love, or my future become a marketing strategy. It has to mean something more, or it's not worth doing at all. When I told the members about this realization, they didn't react the way you might expect. Namjoon just nodded. He said, "You're not running away from the world, you're trying to find your place in it again." Jin smiled that half-joking, half-serious smile and said, "As long as you don't serve raw fish at your wedding, I'll be there." Yoongi didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Make sure whoever you marry understands your silence." Hoseok clapped my shoulder and said, "Just don't lose your light." Jimin didn't speak at all. He just looked at me. And in that look was everything we've shared. The laughter, the fights, the late night talks about who we were becoming. Taehyung, as always, said something that sounded cryptic but hit me later. "Maybe your wedding isn't a ceremony. Maybe it's a turning point." And he was right. See, most people think a wedding is about two people promising forever. But to me, it's about confronting yourself. Because when you decide to share your life with someone, you're not just sharing the pretty part. You're exposing your flaws, your doubts, your fears. And for someone like me who's lived half his life on stage, that's terrifying. I've always been surrounded by applause. Even my silence gets attention. But love doesn't applaud you. It asks you to listen, to show up, to be vulnerable when no one's watching. And that's why I say my wedding isn't canceled. It's transforming into something that can hold the truth. There was a moment during tour last year when this transformation started quietly. We were in Los Angeles, preparing for a show. I was sitting in the corner of the green room watching the members laugh, tease, stretch, and breathe in that pre-show energy. And I realized something strange. I was happy, but also lonely. Not the kind of loneliness that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from living inside expectations. I thought, what if marriage isn't about adding someone to my life, but about stripping away everything that isn't real? That thought stayed with me. It followed me through the stage lights, the confetti, the encores. Later, when I was alone again, I started thinking about what kind of life I wanted after all of this, after the noise fades. I don't know when that will be, and I'm not leaving BTS, but there will come a day when the microphones are off, when the cameras turn away. And in that silence, I don't want to feel like a stranger to myself. I want to remember who I am without the spotlight. My wedding, whenever it happens, is going to be a symbol of that. Not a media event, not a spectacle, but a statement that I'm ready to live a life that feels human again. I've had conversations with my parents about this too. My mom told me something that stayed in my chest like a heartbeat. She said, love isn't about timing, it's about courage. And maybe that's what this stage of my life is about, finding the courage to love while the world watches, without letting that attention poison the purity of it. When I told her I wasn't canceling my plans, she didn't ask who I was marrying or when. She just said, then make sure it's something that brings peace, not pressure. That's the definition of something bigger. Peace, not perfection. The hardest part is explaining this to fans, to you, because you've been with me through everything, the exhaustion, the joy, the rumors, the recovery. You deserve honesty. And I don't want you to think I'm leaving or betraying the dream we built together. But I've realized dreams can evolve. The boy who joined BTS wanted to prove he was enough. The man I'm becoming wants to learn how to give enough. And that shift is what my upcoming wedding represents. It's not about ending something, it's about beginning from a deeper place. When I see the members now, I see reflections of everything that's been sacred about this journey. Namjoon's still the anchor, writing lyrics that make us question the world. Jin, even while serving, still finds ways to remind us what laughter feels like. Yoongi's mind is still a universe of music and silence. Hoseok's light still cuts through every dark day. Jimin still carries that warmth that can undo a bad week with one smile. And Taehyung, he's still the mystery that keeps art alive. And me, I'm learning how to be still in the middle of it all. To not chase the next thing, but to build something that lasts. Sometimes I wonder if maybe love isn't something you find. Maybe it's something you build with the same patience you use to write a song. Layer by layer, verse by verse, mistake by mistake. Maybe that's why I've stopped rushing. Because what's the point of a wedding if it doesn't mirror the truth of who you are? I don't want to perform love. I want to live it. I don't want to announce it. I want to protect it. I don't want to make it perfect. I want to make it real. And to everyone listening who's been told that love should look a certain way, that you need to reach a certain point before you deserve happiness, I want to tell you this. Your timing doesn't have to make sense to anyone else. The only thing that matters is whether it brings peace to your heart. My wedding might not happen soon. It might not happen the way people imagine. But when it does, it'll be built on everything I've learned from the life I've lived so far. It'll be bigger, not in scale, but in meaning. Because bigger means freer. Bigger means honest. Bigger means the kind of love that doesn't collapse under the weight of fame, fear, or judgment. That's the kind of love I want to create. That's the kind of wedding I'm preparing for, even if the world thinks it's postponed. And maybe that's what I've been trying to say all along. The ceremony isn't the point. The transformation is the decision to live truthfully, even when it terrifies you. That's what I'm marrying myself to first. So if you're listening right now, wherever you are, I want you to remember this. Your dreams don't have to look like anyone else's. Your love doesn't need validation, and your timing isn't late. You're exactly where you need to be to start building something bigger. Maybe not today, Maybe not tomorrow, but someday soon, you'll see it. Just like I'm starting to see mine. And when that day comes, when I walk down that aisle, or whatever form it takes, I don't want it to be about fame, or pressure, or performance. I want it to be about peace, about choosing life over expectation, about remembering what it means to be human again, because that's what I lost for a while, the ability to be present without performing. But now I'm finding my way back, slowly, deliberately, honestly, and if that means my wedding becomes something the world can't define, that's okay. Maybe that's what makes it beautiful. There's something strange that happens when you start telling the truth after years of silence. It feels like breaking through glass you didn't realize you were standing behind. For so long, I thought I understood what my life meant. I thought success was supposed to feel like peace, that reaching the top would make the noise stop. But the higher I went, the louder it became. Fame amplifies everything, the cheers, the expectations, the loneliness. And when the world keeps applauding, it becomes harder to hear your own thoughts. That's why I began to question what love even means for someone like me. How do you love when everyone's watching? How do you protect something sacred when every word gets dissected? Every smile gets turned into proof of something you never said. That's why my wedding, whenever it happens, can't just be an event. It has to be an act of resistance against noise, against pressure, against forgetting who I am when no one's looking. A few months ago, I visited Yoongi while he was working late in the studio. He was surrounded by equipment, screens glowing in the dark, melodies looping endlessly. I asked him why he never seems rushed anymore. He looked up from the console and said quietly, "Because I stopped trying to control time." That sentence hit me harder than he probably realized. All these years, I've been fighting time, rushing to grow, rushing to prove, rushing to arrive. But love doesn't respond to that kind of urgency. It needs stillness. It needs breath. Yoongi reminded me that silence isn't the enemy of progress. It's the space that allows something honest to form. That's what I want for my wedding. Not a countdown, but a conversation between two souls who've learned to pause before promising forever. Namjoon once told me that leadership isn't about control, it's about alignment. He said that sometimes the best thing you can do for people is to walk beside them, not ahead. When I think about marriage, that's what I imagine. Two people walking beside each other, learning to align, not dominate. That's something BTS has taught me better than any love story could. You can't force 7 hearts to beat in rhythm for over a decade without learning about patience, compromise, and forgiveness. Every fight, every laugh, every quiet night after a concert shaped how I understand love now. Because love isn't only found in romantic gestures, it's in showing up when the energy is gone, in respecting someone's silence, in choosing to stay even when things get complicated. That's what I've learned from these brothers. That's why I can't let my wedding be just a performance. It has to mean what they've shown me, commitment, not ceremony. I remember a specific day in Busan years ago when I felt completely lost. The pressure, the exhaustion, the whispers of people telling me who I should become, it felt unbearable. I was sitting by the water, staring at the reflection of city lights, when Jimin found me. He didn't say anything at first. He just sat there, hands in his pockets, looking out at the same sea. After a while, he said, "You don't have to fight to be loved." It sounds simple, but it broke me open. For most of my life, I believed love had to be earned, that I had to sing perfectly, look perfect, act perfect to deserve it. But Jimin reminded me that love, real love, doesn't demand a performance. That's why now, when people ask me if I'm ready for marriage, I tell them this: I'm not preparing for a wedding. I'm preparing to stop performing love. I'm preparing to live it quietly, honestly, without needing to prove it to anyone. Jin, before he enlisted, told me something I'll never forget. We were having dinner, laughing about something stupid, when he suddenly got serious and said, "Don't let your happiness depend on applause." That line keeps echoing in my mind. I've been applauded my whole adult life, And it feels good, it's addictive, but it also makes you forget how to recognize happiness when no one's clapping. So I've started learning to build happiness in silence. Cooking at home, walking without headphones, sitting with my dog, journaling instead of posting. Maybe that's what love is too, building peace where no one's watching. That's what I want to bring into my marriage someday. Kind of peace that doesn't need validation to exist. Joseok's energy has always fascinated me. He's light even when life feels heavy. When we talked about love once, he told me, if you love someone, you have to let them see your darkness too. That stayed with me because I've always tried to hide the parts of me that felt too complicated, the doubts, the frustration, the nights when music didn't feel enough. But maybe marriage isn't about hiding your darkness. Maybe it's about finding someone who won't run from it. Joseok reminded me that love isn't meant to cure you. It's meant to accompany you while you heal. And that's what I've started to understand as I grow older, that love isn't a fairy tale ending. It's a lifelong collaboration between two people who refuse to stop trying. Sometimes I look at Taehyung and think he's living in another world. He moves through life with this quiet curiosity, like he's constantly searching for art in the smallest things, a shadow, a note, a breath. Once, when we were on tour, he said something that sounded strange at first. Love is like jazz. It only works when you stop trying to play it perfectly. I didn't understand then, but now I do. Love is improvisation. It's listening more than playing. It's the pauses between the notes that make the song alive. That's how I want my future marriage to feel. Not rehearsed, not flawless, but real enough to breathe, to evolve. Maybe that's why I keep saying it's becoming something bigger. Because the more I understand life, the less I care about how it looks. I care more about how it feels. There was a time I used to check my phone constantly. Likes, comments, updates. It became this invisible rhythm in my day. Every notification felt like a small validation, a reminder that people still cared. But then I realized it wasn't care. I was craving. It was proof that I existed. That's the dangerous thing about fame. It can make you believe that you only exist when someone's looking at you. When I recognized that, I started detaching, slowly deleting apps, turning off notifications, allowing silence. It felt uncomfortable at first, like losing oxygen. But then it started feeling like freedom. That's when I began to understand that the world doesn't define love, presence does. And I want to be fully present when I stand beside the person I'll marry, without distractions, without algorithms deciding how I should feel. The hardest truth I've had to face is that being loved by millions doesn't teach you how to love one person well. Fame gives you attention, not intimacy. It teaches you how to please, not how to be vulnerable. And I'm still learning the difference. Maybe that's why I'm not rushing. Because I want my future wife to meet the real me, the me who sometimes doubts, who sometimes fails, who sometimes disappears into his thoughts. I want her to know Jungkook the person, not Jungkook the performer. And for that to happen, I have to keep deprogramming the parts of me that only know how to perform. Every quiet moment, every choice to step away from noise is part of that deprogramming. It's how I'm preparing not for a show, but for a life. When I think about the future, I see something simple. No flashing lights, no media frenzy, no spectacle, just people I love. Maybe a small gathering, maybe just family and brothers. Maybe music in the background, something Yoongi made. Jin laughing too loudly. Jimin probably crying before I even say my vows. Namjoon giving some poetic speech that makes everyone reflect. Hoseok dancing without caring if anyone joins. Taehyung smiling like he knows something no one else does. And me standing there, finally feeling human again. That's what I imagine when I think about my wedding. Not a headline, but a moment that feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. I don't know when it'll happen. I don't even know where. But I know this. It will be honest. It will be private. It will be built on stillness, not spectacle. And maybe, just maybe, it'll inspire people to slow down, to listen to their own hearts again. Because that's what I've been trying to do lately. Listen, not to the noise, but to the quiet truth that waits underneath. Every day, I'm peeling away another layer of who the world told me to be, just to remember who I was before all of this began. That's the man who'll stand at the altar someday, not the idol, not the brand, but the boy from Busan who just wants to love deeply and live truthfully. And when that day comes, I want the world to see something different. Not a fairy tale, not perfection, not performance, just truth. Because the real miracle isn't that I found love, it's that I found the courage to define it for myself. And that's why I can say with all certainty, my wedding isn't canceled. It's just beginning to mean something so much bigger than anyone ever imagined. There's a quiet kind of fear that comes when you realize the life you built for everyone else doesn't fully belong to you anymore. I remember one night, not too long ago, when I sat in my living room long after everyone had gone to sleep. The city outside my window was alive, but I felt still, almost invisible. My phone was face down, the lights dim, and for the first time in months, there was no sound. No notifications, no vibrations reminding me that the world was still watching. And in that silence, something inside me broke open. I realized how deeply I'd been living for the noise, for approval, for the endless pulse of attention that never truly filled me. I realized how long it had been since I'd felt peace that wasn't performative. That was the night I started writing down what love means to me. Not the version people expect from someone like Jungkook of BTS, but the version that lives underneath the stage lights in the quiet corners of my heart that no one claps for. When I started writing, I didn't think I'd show anyone, but those words became my mirror. I wrote about what I fear in love, the loss of freedom, the weight of expectation, the fear of disappointing people who think they know me. And I also wrote about what I crave, the freedom to be small, to be flawed, to be loved without translation or explanation, the kind of love that doesn't require a camera to prove it exists. I wrote about wanting to wake up next to peace instead of pressure. I wrote about the sound of laughter that doesn't echo in microphones. And slowly, through those late night pages, I started realizing that marriage, for me, isn't just about choosing someone else. It's about choosing myself again. Choosing the part of me that exists outside applause. I spoke to Namjoon about this not long after. We were on the phone, talking about life, philosophy, and the weight that comes with being constantly seen. He said something that I keep repeating to myself. Visibility can be its own kind of blindness. I understood exactly what he meant. The more visible you become to the world, the easier it is to lose sight of yourself. And maybe that's why love feels different for me now. It's no longer about being seen, but about being understood by someone who doesn't need to look at the surface. Namjoon told me that love, like leadership, needs awareness. You have to notice when you're drifting away from who you really are. And I realized that's what my wedding is about. It's my way of anchoring myself to reality again, of promising that I won't lose sight of what matters no matter how bright the world becomes. Yoongi once told me that silence is sacred. He said, when you learn to sit with silence, you stop fearing it. I think that's what growing up feels like, learning to stop fearing the quiet. For so many years, I was afraid of silence because it meant the world wasn't listening anymore. But now, silence feels like space. Space to breathe, to think, to listen to my own heartbeat without the rhythm of applause dictating it. I want my marriage to have that silence, to not fill every pause with noise or distraction. I want the kind of connection that doesn't depend on constant validation. The kind of love where two people can sit in the same room, not speaking, and still feel like everything is being said. That's something I learned not from romance, but from BTS. We've shared stages and schedules and exhaustion so deep it feels physical, but what held us together wasn't just music, it was the unspoken understanding that we didn't need to say everything to know everything. That's the kind of love I want to bring into my future. Jin used to tell me that love needs laughter, real laughter, the kind that breaks tension and makes time stop for a moment. I didn't understand how vital that was until I started losing it. There was a time when I laughed because it was expected, because it looked good in interviews or clips. But the laughter that keeps love alive doesn't need an audience. It happens when the cameras are off, when you burn a meal and laugh about it, when you make a mistake and choose to smile instead of apologize. That's the kind of laughter I want in my marriage, something unfiltered and human. When Jin said it, he probably didn't think I'd remember, but I did, because he was right. Laughter is what keeps the weight of love from crushing you. Then there's Hoseok. He has this light that never seems to fade, even when life gets dark. I once asked him how he stays so positive, and he said, I don't. I just remember light exists even when I can't see it. That line became a part of me, because love, too, isn't about never losing hope. It's about remembering that even when things get hard, there's still light somewhere waiting to be rediscovered. That's what I want to hold on to as I build my life. My wedding isn't about promising a perfect future. It's about promising to keep searching for light, even when it disappears. And then there's Taehyung. He's always been different, seeing the world through lenses that most of us don't even know exist. He said to me once, "You don't have to be understood by everyone to be loved deeply by someone." I didn't get it at first, but the longer I sat with that thought, the more it began to feel like truth. I spent so much of my life trying to be understood by everyone, by fans, media, strangers online, and in the process, I forgot that love doesn't require explanation. It requires presence. It requires truth. The person who will stand with me at the altar someday won't love me because the world does. They'll love me because they've seen the quiet, uncertain parts of me and stayed anyway. There's another thing that's changed. For years, I thought of my wedding as something that would happen after everything else, as the reward for surviving the chaos. But now, I see it differently. It's not the end of a story. It's the beginning of a truer one. My wedding isn't the prize at the end of fame. It's a doorway back to being human. When I stand there someday, I don't want it to symbolize success. I want it to symbolize surrender, the willingness to be seen, not as a perfect artist, but as a whole person. That's what something bigger means to me. It's not grandeur, it's honesty. It's the realization that love doesn't need to be celebrated by millions to matter. It only needs to be real. I think about ARMY often when I imagine this future. You've seen me grow, stumble, laugh, cry, and question everything. You've given me a love so wide and generous that sometimes I still don't know how to hold it all. You've been part of my story in ways you can't even imagine. And I want you to know that none of this, the talk of marriage, of growing, of finding peace, means I'm leaving that behind. It means I'm carrying it forward, transforming it into something deeper. Because what I've learned from you is that love doesn't end when the stage lights go out. It keeps echoing quietly in the spaces between. Sometimes I wonder what it will feel like to walk away from the stage one day, not in goodbye, but in gratitude. I wonder if that same silence that used to scare me will finally feel like home. Because when I imagine that moment, I don't see loss, I see beginnings. I see a new kind of stage, the one where life unfolds slowly, without scripts or cameras, the one where love is performed not in front of millions, but between two people who simply choose to stay. And I think that's what I've been trying to build all along. So no, my wedding isn't canceled. It's becoming a declaration, not to the world, but to myself, that I refuse to let noise define my peace, that I refuse to let fame replace love, that I refuse to let fear dictate the way I give or receive. It's becoming something bigger because I'm becoming something truer. And maybe that's all I've ever wanted, to live a life that's honest enough to breathe. To love someone not as Jungkook of BTS, but simply as Jungkook, the human being who's still learning, still breaking, still healing, and still dreaming of something real. Understood. Here's block 4 of your long-form narrative. Jungkook, My wedding isn't canceled, it's becoming something bigger, written in the same emotional, prophetic, confessional rhythm as Elon Musk. Your phone isn't listening, it's doing something worse. No sections, no labels, no dialogue tags, just a single continuous 5000 word style narrative flow in English. There's a moment every artist faces. Though few talk about it, the moment you realize that applause can start to sound like chains. For years, I thought I understood the rhythm of success. Wake up, train, sing, perform, sleep, repeat. Every scream from the crowd felt like oxygen. Every camera flashed like sunlight. But lately, I've been asking myself, what happens when the lights stay on too long? When you can't find darkness to rest in anymore? That's what my life became, a stage that never dimmed. And somewhere inside that endless brightness, I began to lose the outline of who I was. That's when I started thinking about marriage, not as a celebration, but as a return. A quiet turning back towards something real, something human, something I could hold without it disappearing into noise. I remember one day in Japan during tour season, we had just finished a concert, one of those nights where everything went right. The energy, the crowd, the perfection. I walked back to my room, still sweating, still high on adrenaline. But when I closed the door, silence hit like a wave. It was too quiet. I stared at my reflection in the mirror and realized I didn't recognize the person looking back. The smile looked practiced. The eyes looked tired. That's when it hit me. If I don't learn to live outside this reflection, I'll never truly live at all. That's the same feeling I imagined before standing at the altar someday. I don't want to bring my reflection into that moment. I want to bring my real self, the one that still remembers what peace feels like. Namjoon once told me, the stage is a mirror. It gives back what you put into it, but never what you need. That sentence changed me. Because what I needed wasn't applause, it was connection. Not the kind that's measured in likes or views, but the kind that happens quietly, in small rooms, between people who don't expect perfection. That's what I've been trying to build behind the scenes, relationships that don't require a performance. And that's what my wedding will represent. The choice to build connection over perfection. To be seen as flawed but sincere. To be loved not for the dream, but for the truth. I've started spending more time with my family again. My mom still calls me by my childhood name when she's cooking. My dad still reminds me to sleep early, even though he knows I won't. There's something grounding about hearing voices that knew you before the world did. I asked my mom once what she thought marriage meant. She said, it's when two people decide to grow old facing the same direction, even when the scenery changes. I wrote that down immediately, because that's what life with BTS has been too. 7 people facing the same direction through storms and seasons. And I realize now that love, whether between friends, brothers, or partners, survives because of alignment, not perfection. You don't have to walk at the same speed. You just have to keep walking the same way. Yoongi told me once that creativity and love are the same. They both demand vulnerability. You can't write a real song without bleeding a little. You can't love someone deeply without showing the scars. I used to think vulnerability was weakness, but now I know it's the doorway to truth. And maybe that's why marriage both excites and scares me. It asks for a kind of exposure no stage ever could. A life where applause can't save you, where your mistakes aren't edited out. It's terrifying, but it's honest. And honesty has always been the foundation of who we are as BTS. Even when we were scared, even when we were unsure, we faced it together. Maybe that's what I'm learning to do again, face my own truth without fear. Hoseok keeps reminding me that love should never dim your light. If it's real, he said, it makes both of you shine brighter. I think about that often, because it's easy in this world to confuse love with sacrifice, to believe that you have to give up your dreams to prove your loyalty. But I don't want that. I don't want my future wife to shrink herself to fit beside me. I want her to be her own universe. I want us to orbit each other freely, without trying to control the gravity. That's something Hoseok taught me through his energy, how to celebrate light in others without feeling like it takes from your own. That's what I want my marriage to feel, like a celebration of two lights that learn to coexist. Jimin, I think about him often when I talk about love because he's one of the few people who's seen every side of me, the joy, the doubt, the exhaustion, the silence. We've shared years of unspoken understanding. A friendship built not on constant words, but on constant presence. Once, after a long night of rehearsal, I told him I was scared of the future, scared of letting people down, scared of changing. He said, change doesn't ruin love, it reveals it. I never forgot that. Because every time I've changed, the people who truly loved me stayed. The ones who only loved the idea of me drifted away. That's how I'll know when I'm standing beside the right person. They'll see me evolve and won't ask me to shrink back into who I was. Taehyung, in his quiet way, has been my teacher in something else, patience. He has this calm that unnerves you at first. Like he's always living in a slower dimension. I asked him once how he manages not to rush when everything in our lives moves so fast. He said, because time can't steal what you build slowly. That's when I realized maybe I don't need to plan my wedding date or announce anything or prove anything. Maybe it's okay that I don't know when it'll happen. Because love built slowly can't be broken quickly. And that's the kind of forever I'm working toward. There are moments when I still feel the pull of the spotlight. It's intoxicating. The cheers, the lights, the adrenaline, it's a drug. And once you've tasted it, silence feels like withdrawal. But I'm learning to detox from that addiction. Slowly, deliberately. There are nights when I sit in the studio alone. No cameras, no staff, just a microphone and my thoughts. I sing not for release dates or charts, but for the small truth inside me that still needs to breathe. That's the Jungkook I want to bring into marriage, the one who sings because he feels, not because he's expected to. The one who doesn't measure love in reactions, but in stillness. I had a dream recently. In it, I was standing on a beach at dawn. The sky was pink and quiet. The waves slow and deliberate. Beside me were the members, each standing at different distances, but all facing the same sunrise. None of us spoke, but we didn't need to. Then I looked down and saw a ring in my hand. Not heavy, not ornate, just simple. I didn't know whose it was, but I knew what it meant. It wasn't about possession. It was about promise. The promise to keep walking toward the light, even when the world changes. When I woke up, I wrote one line in my notebook. My wedding isn't a date. It's a direction. That line has become my compass. The more I think about it, the more I realize that something bigger doesn't mean grander. It means deeper. It means living with awareness instead of assumption. It means not letting fear dictate your timeline. I'm not running for marriage, and I'm not chasing it either. I'm preparing for it in the only way that feels true, by learning to be whole first. Because love doesn't complete you, it meets you. It joins two wholes, not two halves. And maybe the reason I'm taking my time is because I finally understand that wholeness takes patience. I want to arrive at that altar, not perfect, but honest. Not flawless, but free. Sometimes I think about the fans again, the messages, the tears, the stories you've shared with me. You've turned my songs into lifelines. And I hope when you listen to this part of my story, you hear not distance, but reflection. I'm not leaving you. I'm just learning how to live with the same intention I bring to music to make everything I love mean something. I want you to know that when I talk about marriage, I'm also talking about you, about loyalty, about the courage to keep believing in love even when the world turns it into spectacle. Because every time you've stood by me, you've reminded me that real love doesn't demand it indoors. There's something I promised myself recently, that when the day finally comes, when I stand there ready to say vows, I'll do it not as the artist the world created, but as the man my brothers helped me become. Every song we've written, every stage we've shared, every tear we've hidden in dressing rooms, it all led here. To a kind of love that doesn't fade under pressure. That's why my wedding isn't canceled. It's evolving, expanding, preparing for the version of me that's still learning to be free. Maybe that's all any of us are doing, learning how to love without losing ourselves. And if that's true, then I think I'm finally on the right path. There's a strange peace that comes from admitting you don't have all the answers. For years, I thought I had to. Every question about my future marriage, music, family felt like a test I needed to pass. Fans would ask, "When will you get married?" Interviewers would smile and wait for the perfect answer. Even my own heart demanded certainty. But lately, I've started to realize that not knowing is its own kind of wisdom, because life doesn't unfold like a schedule. It breathes like a song. It slows down. It speeds up. It changes key. And love, the kind I want to build, doesn't happen on command. It happens when you finally stop performing long enough to listen to what your soul's been trying to tell you. That's why my wedding isn't canceled. It's just not ready to be forced into the world's timeline. It's becoming something that can only exist when the noise fades and the truth feels safe enough to speak. The truth is, I've been unlearning how to chase perfection. Every stage, every photo, every appearance was part of a pattern that told me I had to be flawless to be loved. I didn't realize how deep that belief went until I started thinking about marriage. Because love, real love, doesn't reward perfection. It asks for honesty. It asks for the version of you that trembles. And that's hard for someone who's spent years standing under lights designed to erase every imperfection. I used to think vulnerability meant weakness, but now I see it's the doorway to peace. You can't build forever on performance. You can only build it on presence. Namjoon helped me see that more clearly than anyone. We were on a late flight, the kind where everyone's half asleep and the world feels quiet for once. He looked out the window for a long time and said, "You know, we've built something huge, but the real work now is learning how to be small again." I didn't say anything, but those words stayed in me. Because maybe that's what marriage is too, learning how to be small again. Not in a defeated way, but in a human way. Letting go of the image, the weight of being everyone's idea of perfection, and just existing next to someone who knows your flaws and doesn't flinch. Yoongi once said, "If you want to love someone deeply, you have to be willing to be misunderstood." That hit me hard, because so much of my life has been about being understood by millions. Every song, every lyric, every post is analyzed and interpreted. But real intimacy is built on the moments that don't need translation. It's built on trust, on faith, on knowing that the silence between two people can hold more truth than 1,000 explanations. That's what I crave more than anything, a connection that doesn't need to be explained to anyone else. That's what my future marriage represents. A sanctuary of misunderstanding that still feels like home. Jin, before he left for service, gave me a piece of advice that felt almost too simple to take seriously. He said, "Don't confuse comfort with love." I didn't get it back then, but the older I get, the more I understand. Love isn't about staying comfortable, it's about growing together through the discomfort. It's about choosing each other again when the excitement fades, when the routine sets in, when silence feels heavy. That's what I want my wedding to symbolize, a promise, not of constant joy, but of continued growth. Because what's bigger than happiness is meaning, and meaning takes time. Hoseok told me recently that marriage is like choreography. You both have to find the rhythm, he said, laughing. If one rushes, you both fall. That image stuck with me, because I've spent my whole career chasing perfect synchronization, timing, beats, cues, but love doesn't work that way. It's not about flawless movement. It's about rhythm you can only feel, not measure. Sometimes one person leads, sometimes the other does. Sometimes you stumble, but the dance keeps going. That's what I want for my marriage, a rhythm that forgives, that adapts, that keeps finding its way back to harmony even when the world feels offbeat. Then there's Jimin. I can't talk about love without mentioning him. We've shared so much joy, exhaustion, arguments, laughter that only makes sense to us. He's one of the few people who's seen every version of me and still chooses to stand close. There was one night when I asked him, "Do you think love can survive change?" He smiled and said, "If it's love, it doesn't survive change, it becomes it." That sentence changed everything for me, because I used to fear change. I thought growing meant drifting apart. But now I see that real love transforms with you. It doesn't demand that you stay who you were. It helps you become who you're meant to be. That's why I'm not afraid anymore of what the future looks like. Whether it happens soon or years from now, my wedding will be a reflection of that kind of love, evolving, breathing, alive. Taehyung has always been the mirror that shows me things I don't want to see. His silence often says more than anyone's words. Once, when I was overwhelmed by all the rumors and expectations, he said quietly, "Maybe people aren't misunderstanding you. Maybe they're just seeing you before you fully become yourself." That perspective changed how I look at everything, even love. Because marriage isn't about finding someone who completes the finished version of you. It's about finding someone who's patient enough to meet you while you're still becoming. That's what something bigger means. Not grandeur, not spectacle, just evolution. And when I think about evolution, I think about BTS. We've been through seasons where we questioned everything, our purpose, our direction, our individual paths. But every time we came back stronger, because we gave each other space to grow. That's the same principle I want in my marriage. Space, trust, the freedom to change without fear of losing the connection. Because love without space becomes possession. And I never want to be trapped in what the world expects love to look like. I've started to notice how much of modern life is about control. Controlling how we look, how we're seen, what people think of us. But love, I'm realizing, is the opposite. It's surrender. It's saying, I trust you enough to see me when I can't hold it all together. And that surrender is terrifying because it means handing over the parts of you that fame taught you to protect. But it's also the only way to truly be free. That's what I want my marriage to be, a practice of freedom disguised as commitment. Because when love is real, commitment isn't a cage. It's a choice made over and over with joy. I still remember a fan letter I read years ago. It said, "I hope you never lose the part of you that believes in forever." I held on to that line because there were times I almost did. There were seasons when I thought forever was just a word people used to feel safe. But now I see forever differently. It's not about endless time, it's about endless intention. It's about waking up every day and deciding to keep building, even when it's hard. That's the forever I'm preparing for. Not the fairy tale, but the foundation. Sometimes when I'm alone, I imagine that moment, the vows, the quiet, the faces of the people who matter most. Namjoon, probably giving a speech that makes everyone cry. Jin, teasing me even in the middle of it. Yoongi, smiling softly like he already wrote a song about it. Hoseok probably trying to start a dance circle halfway through. Jimin teary-eyed but proud. Taehyung silent, watching everything like he's painting it in his mind. And me just breathing fully, deeply, knowing that every step, every heartbreak, every song led to this simple, sacred promise to keep becoming. So no, my wedding isn't canceled. It's becoming something bigger because I'm becoming someone truer. And maybe that's the point, not to rush toward a finish line, but to build a love that lasts beyond the noise. A love that grows quietly, faithfully, patiently, in its own rhythm. Because in the end, it's not the timing that matters, it's the truth behind it. And when the time finally comes, I don't want it to be perfect. I just want it to be real. There are nights when the world feels louder than ever, even in silence. Nights when I lie awake, thinking about what it means to grow up under a spotlight that never turns off. Sometimes I wonder if I learned how to love through applause, because it's easy to mistake attention for affection, admiration for intimacy. But real love, I've learned, doesn't ask you to perform. It asks you to stand still in the presence of someone who sees you completely and doesn't turn away. That's what I'm chasing now, not a stage, not perfection, not validation, but stillness. The kind of stillness that feels like peace. And that's why my wedding isn't canceled. It's transforming into something that no longer needs to prove itself to the world. It's becoming a moment of truth instead of a headline. Lately, I've been thinking about the invisible pressure that comes with being seen by millions. When you live in the public eye, you start measuring yourself by the noise around you. You start wondering what version of yourself people love most, the performer, the idol, the man, or the myth. But the deeper I go into this reflection, the more I realize that love can't survive inside a performance. It needs room to breathe, to make mistakes, to exist without explanation. That's what this next chapter of my life is teaching me. Marriage, for me, isn't about escaping fame. It's about redefining what it means to be real again. There was a time when I thought I had to choose between love and purpose, between being Jungkook of BTS and being Jungkook the man. But the truth is, I don't have to choose. I just have to balance. That's what Namjoon taught me. Balance is the art of staying grounded while everything around you moves. He told me once that peace isn't the absence of chaos. It's the ability to stay centered within it. That's exactly how I want my love to feel: balanced, calm, grounded, even in the storms. Because if marriage is just another stage, it will collapse under its own weight. But if it's built on balance, it can hold anything. Yoongi has this quiet wisdom that always finds me at the right moments. During a late night studio session, I told him I was scared of disappointing people if I ever decided to settle down. He looked up and said, "People will always be disappointed in the version of you they can't control." That sentence burned itself into me, because for so long, I tried to be everything to everyone. The perfect performer, the perfect son, the perfect man who never breaks. But love doesn't want perfection, it wants presence. It wants you to show up even when you're imperfect. That's what I'm learning to do now, to show up, to stop performing strength and start living with vulnerability. Jin's words still echo whenever I think about happiness. "You can't outsource it," he said once. "No one can live it for you." He was right. I used to look for happiness in results, in awards, in milestones, in recognition. But happiness that depends on conditions will always collapse when the conditions change. I don't want my marriage to depend on perfection. I want it to grow through imperfections, through reality, through days that aren't beautiful but still belong to us. Maybe that's why I've been saying it's becoming something bigger. Because it's no longer about a perfect day, it's about building a peaceful life. Hoseok's presence has always been light, even when the world feels heavy. He once said something that changed how I see love. Real love doesn't fix your darkness, it teaches you how to walk through it. That's how I want my marriage to feel, not as a cure, but as a companionship through healing. Because love isn't meant to erase pain, it's meant to make the pain bearable. I used to think love was about grand gestures. Now I know it's about quiet endurance, the way someone stays, the way they listen, the way they remind you that even the hardest days still have meaning. Jimin often reminds me of grace, the kind that doesn't demand anything in return. There's something in his eyes, in the way he listens, that teaches you to slow down. Once, during a long conversation about our futures, he said, "The world won't always understand your choices, but that's not your job, it's to live them." I held on to that, because when I imagine my future marriage, I know not everyone will understand it. People will judge, speculate, misunderstand. But love isn't a democracy, it's a dialogue between two souls. And as long as we understand it, that's enough. That's the freedom I want to defend. Taehyung's always been different. His quietness hides a depth that's impossible to capture. He once told me, "You can't rush timeless things." I think he meant art, but it applies to love too. Everything in this world feels accelerated. Music, media, relationships, but the most beautiful things take time. That's why I don't panic when people ask, when will you get married? Because love built in patience lasts longer than love built in pressure. It's the waiting that gives it value. Every day I learn something new about myself, about what I need, about what I can give. And each lesson brings me closer to being ready, not just to marry someone, but to truly share a life. There was a time when I couldn't imagine slowing down. My life was a constant rush, a blur of rehearsals, interviews, flights, performances. But when the pandemic forced everything to stop, I learned something unexpected. Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. In that stillness, I started seeing what I'd been running from, the need to belong to myself again. That realization has shaped everything since my wedding, my love, my music. They all have to come from that place of belonging. Because without that, everything else becomes noise. I think about the members often, how each of them represents a piece of love in a different form. Namjoon is understanding, Jin is joy, Yoongi is truth, Hoseok is hope, Jimin is compassion, Taehyung is mystery. Together, they've shown me what it means to love without condition, to stay even when it's difficult, to forgive even when it's messy, to protect even when no one sees it. And maybe that's why I'm not afraid of marriage anymore. Because I've already been part of something that taught me the weight and beauty of commitment. When I finally stand at the altar someday, I don't want the world to see a celebrity wedding. I want them to see a man who's found peace. A man who's still learning, still growing, still falling and getting back up. A man who's ready to love without fear. And if that love inspires even one person to believe in something honest again, then that's enough. That's what something bigger really means. It's not fame, not spectacle, not approval. It's the courage to live truthfully, even when the truth is quiet. So when you hear that my wedding isn't canceled, I want you to understand it was never about canceling. It was about evolving, about choosing authenticity over attention, about making peace with the parts of me that used to chase perfection and letting them rest. Because love isn't about being flawless. It's about being found. And I'm learning slowly that the more I let myself be found, the more I can finally love without losing myself. There's a part of me that still wakes up, sometimes expecting to hear the roar of a stadium, the countdown before a performance, the synchronized breath of 6 other voices beside mine. For years, that rhythm was my heartbeat. The adrenaline, the unity, the magic of those moments, it became my definition of life. But lately, I've started to understand that life isn't only made in the noise. It's shaped in the quiet moments that come after the ones where no one's watching, where you ask yourself who you are when the music stops. That's where my thoughts about marriage have grown from. Not pressure, not expectation, but the silence that follows applause. Because that silence is where truth lives. That's where I've started to build a vision of what love really means. My wedding isn't canceled. It's just waiting for me to become someone who can stand in that silence without fear. I think about those moments, often the ones between songs, between eras, between versions of myself. I used to fill them with noise, rehearsals, plans, distractions, anything to avoid hearing my own uncertainty. But growth happens in the spaces we try to skip. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's where clarity hides. I learned that from Namjoon. He once told me, if the silence feels unbearable, it means you're listening to the right questions. That stayed with me, because now, when the silence comes, I don't run from it. I ask what it's trying to tell me. And lately, it's been telling me to slow down, to listen, to prepare, to build something lasting, instead of something loud. That's what love feels like to me now. Not a spark, but a steady flame. Yoongi always knew how to live in that silence. He doesn't rush to fill it. He lets it shape him. Once, I told him I was scared that love would take away my edge, that it would soften me too much, make me lose the intensity that drives me. He smiled, barely looking up, and said, maybe soft isn't the opposite of strong. Maybe it's proof you've survived. I didn't say anything, but that line carved itself into me. Because he was right. Love doesn't erase your strength, it transforms it. It turns fire into warmth. And that's what I want my marriage to be. Not an escape from who I am, but an evolution of it. Jin's laughter echoes in my mind whenever I think too seriously about the future. He's always been the reminder that joy isn't a distraction, it's fuel. Once, while we were all eating together, he said, if you can't laugh together, you'll never last together. It sounded simple then, but now I realize it's wisdom. Because the world outside can be cruel, but laughter turns pain into memory. When I picture my wedding, I don't imagine perfection. I imagine laughter, the kind that makes your chest hurt, the kind that reminds you that love doesn't need to be polished to be beautiful. Hoseok is the embodiment of joy. But behind that light, there's a kind of discipline I deeply respect. I once asked him how he manages to stay hopeful no matter what. And he said, because I choose to see light even when it's far away. That's what marriage will require too, a daily choice to see the light even when distance or difficulty come. I know there will be times when love feels far, when life feels too fast, when distance creeps in. But hope is a practice, not a feeling. That's something Hoseok taught me. It's choosing to love again and again, even when it's hard. That's what makes it sacred. Jimin, more than anyone, reminds me that love is courage. He's always been brave in quiet ways, the kind of bravery that shows up in kindness. Once, after a tough week, I told him I felt like I was falling behind, like everyone was moving forward faster than me. He looked at me and said, you're not behind, you're becoming. Those words healed something I didn't even realize was broken. Because that's what love feels like. It's not a race to reach perfection. It's becoming together. It's seeing potential where others only see pressure. And that's how I know my wedding, whenever it happens, won't be rushed. It will happen in its right time, when becoming turns into being. Then there's Taehyung. His way of seeing the world never stopped surprising me. He once said, love doesn't need an audience. It sounds simple, but it hit me hard. Because so much of my life has been lived in public. Every gesture, every smile, every moment is interpreted, analyzed, magnified. But real love thrives in secrecy, not in spectacle. It grows in private spaces, in the corners, no one posts about. That's what I want my future marriage to be, a secret garden the world doesn't need to see to believe in. Because love loses its shape when it becomes performance. It's the invisible parts that hold it together. I think about Army often when I reflect on all this. You've seen me at my brightest and my most uncertain. You've seen me grow, fall, rebuild, and keep learning. You've loved me without needing perfection. That love has been my teacher. Because of you, I understand now that real connection doesn't depend on control, it depends on trust. You trust me enough to evolve, to make choices that reflect my truth. And I want to honor that by living authentic. My marriage will never erase what we've built, it'll expand it. Because everything I know about love, I learned through connection, through sharing parts of my soul with you and with my brothers. Sometimes I wonder what it will feel like when that day finally comes. The wedding, the quiet before the music starts. I imagine the members standing beside me, not as idols, but as brothers who've walked with me through every version of myself. Namjoon giving a calm smile. Jin cracking a joke that makes everyone laugh right before I say my vows. Yoongi watching quietly, maybe pretending he's not emotional. Hoseok radiating pure joy, unable to sit still. Jimin wiping his eyes, trying to hide it. Taehyung looking right at me, as if to say, see, you waited for the right moment. That's how I picture it, not as a performance, but as a continuation, a promise to live the way we've always lived, honestly. The world might expect extravagance, headlines, perfection, but what I want is something simpler. I want sincerity. I want love that doesn't need to trend. Love that doesn't need translation. Because I've seen what happens when you try to turn life into a brand, it loses its heartbeat. My wedding isn't a brand. It's a beginning. It's the most human thing I could ever do. And it's becoming something bigger. Not because of size or spectacle, but because it's rooted in truth. When I finally stand there, I don't want to feel like I'm closing a chapter. I want to feel like I'm opening one. A chapter that's quieter, but deeper. A chapter that includes everything I've learned from this life, from music, from pain, from friendship, from faith. I don't know when that day will come, and I don't need to, because the becoming is already happening. Every time I choose peace over pressure, every time I choose patience over performance, every time I choose love over fear, that's another step closer. So when people ask why I keep saying my wedding isn't canceled, I smile, because they're still thinking about the ceremony. But I'm talking about the meaning. The ceremony will happen when it's time, but the meaning, it's already alive. It's growing in the silence, in the stillness, in every decision to stay human in a world that forgets what that means. That's what I'm building. That's what I'll be ready for. And when it finally happens, it won't just be a wedding. It'll be proof that love can survive fame, fear, and everything in between.